The haunting on Route 666. Jake Holloway had been a truck driver for 15 years, hauling freight across the country, through long nights and endless highways. He thought he had seen it all: crazy weather, reckless drivers, and sketchy truck stops. But nothing compared to the nightmare that awaited him on Route 666, an infamous road that few dared to travel. It started like any other long-haul trip. Jake had picked up a late-night delivery, an urgent cargo that needed to reach a remote town before dawn. His dispatcher, Eddie, gave him the details over the radio. "You gotta be careful on this route, Jake. Locals say it's cursed." Jake chuckled. He didn't believe in ghost stories. "Eddie, I've driven through tornadoes, blizzards, and bandit territory. What's a little ghost talk?" Eddie hesitated before replying, "Just, if anything weird happens, don't stop." Jake shrugged it off and pushed the throttle, his 18-wheeler roaring down the dark, foggy road. The first few miles were uneventful, just an eerie silence except for the hum of his engine. But then, his radio crackled. "Driver, do you copy?" Jake frowned. He hadn't seen another vehicle in miles. "Yeah, I copy. Who's this?" Silence. Then, a distorted whisper, "Turn back." A chill ran down Jake's spine. He checked his mirrors: empty highway, nothing but endless blackness stretching behind him. He shook his head and kept driving. Probably some joker messing around on the CB radio. Then, out of nowhere, his headlights caught something ahead, a figure standing in the middle of the road. It was a woman. She wore a flowing white dress, her long black hair hanging over her face. She didn't move. Jake's instincts kicked in. He slammed on the brakes, his tires screeching as the massive truck skidded to a stop. His heart pounded. He rolled down his window. "Ma'am, you okay?" No response. He turned on his high beams. That's when he saw her face. Or lack of one. Where her eyes should have been, there were just two empty, black pits. Her mouth stretched into a wide, unnatural grin, far beyond what any human jaw should allow. And then, she screamed. Not a normal scream. It was an ear-piercing, distorted wail that made the air vibrate. Jake's headlights flickered, and his truck's engine sputtered. His radio crackled again. "I warned you." Jake's blood turned to ice. He floored the gas, swerving around the woman, but as he passed, she vanished into thin air. The chase begins. Heart pounding, Jake sped down the road, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He flicked on his radio. "Eddie, you there? Something's wrong." Static. Then, Jake turned back. It wasn't Eddie's voice. It was his own voice. Then, his mirrors fogged up from the inside. Words appeared as if something unseen had breathed on them. "You can't leave." His breath caught in his throat. He wiped the mirror, but the words remained. Then his truck's temperature dropped to freezing. The windshield frosted over, ice forming on the inside. His breath came out in visible puffs. He glanced at his dashboard. His fuel gauge was dropping fast. That wasn't possible. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the road. Jake barely had time to react before something massive slammed into his truck. The rig lurched sideways, tires skidding as he fought for control. The impact felt like he had hit another vehicle. But there was nothing there. Then, through the windshield, he saw her. The woman was now crawling on all fours like a spider, her head twisted unnaturally backward, staring right at him. She was on the hood of his truck. The horror unfolds. Jake did the only thing he could. He hit the wipers. The blades swiped across her face, but she didn't move. Instead, her mouth opened wider and wider until it split her face in half. A guttural growl erupted from her throat. Jake screamed. Then, she was gone. The truck's headlights flickered back on, and everything went silent. The road stretched ahead, empty. Had he imagined it? His heart pounded in his ears as he tried to catch his breath. Then his radio crackled again. Jake, behind you. His blood ran cold. Slowly, he turned his head toward his sleeper cab. A pair of black, hollow eyes stared at him from the darkness. Jake didn't think. He jumped out of the moving truck, tumbling onto the cold asphalt as the rig kept rolling down the road. Pain shot through his body, but he didn't care. He scrambled to his feet and ran toward a nearby gas station, barely visible through the fog. The truck? It kept driving, straight into the darkness. The aftermath. Jake stumbled into the gas station. Breathless, covered in dirt and blood. The cashier, an old man with deep wrinkles, looked up from behind the counter. "You look like you've seen a ghost, son," he said. Jake nodded, unable to speak. The old man sighed, shaking his head. "Let me guess, you came off Route 666? Jake froze. "How do you know?" The OL